What if everything you've learned about compliance could work together to create something greater than the sum of its parts? In this pivotal episode, Ross brings together all 5 pillars of the Compliance Advantage framework, showing you exactly how they interconnect to transform compliance from a cost center into a strategic advantage. You'll discover how the investment mindset activates the essentials, why the liability pillar changes everything about leadership accountability, how finding the right steady partner enables confident growth, and why the assessment serves as your radar for opportunities ahead. Ross reveals the specific sequence these pillars follow, why they build on each other like constructing a house, and most importantly, the one decision that makes everything else fall into place. This is where theory becomes strategy and compliance becomes your competitive edge. Ross, over the past 5 episodes, we've taken healthcare leaders through each of our 5 pillars individually. Today, let's bring them all together. How do these pillars work as a unified framework to transform compliance from a cost center into a strategic advantage?
I'm really glad we're bringing them all together because I think it's important that we all know that they are interconnected. They don't operate individually. They all kind of build off of each other. And I like to think about it like building a house, right? And so the first one is the investment, and that's when you really decide that you are going to build a house. You're going to buy the plans, you're going to buy the lot, you're going to make that investment and get that loan, and you're going to say, this is what I'm going to spend on my house. I'm really starting off to say, I'm going to make that investment. Next it moves into our essentials, which is really the infrastructure, the foundation, and the structure of your house. It's the walls, it's the foundation that it's built on. Is it solid? Does it have all the right pieces and elements so that it's not going to fall apart? And that's really our essentials. And then on top of that is like, who's going to take responsibility for this house? Like what happens if it falls down? What happens if it doesn't get built correctly? Who's really going to be responsible for that? And whether it's your insurance company or you or whatever, you really have to figure out that on the liability standpoint, who's going to be responsible for this thing that I've invested in and who's going to take control over it. Then when you're building a house, you really look for that steady partner. As we talk about it, it's the guidance. It's who's going to lead you through this process, who's the general contractor, who is the person that is going to close your house at the end of the day. And that's really that steady partner. And you really want that person to be thinking strategically, being transparent, all the acronyms that are under the steady partner that we'll go over in a second. You want that person to help guide you down the road of what you should and shouldn't be doing when you're building that house. And then finally, it's the assessment. And the assessments after you've built the house and now you're getting your inspection, you want to make sure that it's doing the things that it needs to do. You want to make sure that it's working the right way. You want to make sure the electricity is working, the toilets are working, the plumbing, the gas in the house with whether it's in your kitchen or wherever. You want to make sure everything is going okay so that when you get into that house and you start living in it, you don't wake up or not wake up from carbon dioxide poisoning or have a flood in your house or some electrical issue happens and it burns down. And that's really where the assessment comes in post build, and you're really doing that inspection and that infrastructure. So thinking about each pillar, they're all put together so that you need each one of them in a certain category in a certain time frame that builds this infrastructure of a compliance program. Overarchingly, all of them together creates that compliance advantage, and that compliance advantage is really the thing that you should be looking for in your compliance program, not just protection, but also the advantage that it creates for you as an organization.
Let's start with the investment. You've taught us that compliance is strategic capital, not a cost center. How does this mindset shift set the foundation for everything else?
The investment is probably one of the most important pieces of it. Once you've decided that you need a compliance program and you've made that understanding that we are going to make an investment in this, because A, it's the right thing to do. B, with the Affordable Care Act, you say you have to do it. And C, you really understand that the benefits that it can bring you. Once you start making that investment and you understand that it's not just something that I have to have, it's something that I need to create this advantage. And it really is, the framework around that is the 3 Ps, right? So it's protecting your profits, it's patient trust equity, and its preferred partner status. And those are really important to understand because under protecting your profits, you really do want to ensure that all of the money that you are making in healthcare, lawfully making in healthcare, remains in your pockets. And to do the right thing, doing it correctly, having an active compliance program can help you retain those profits and make sure that you're not giving all that money back because you've done something wrong. Preferred partner status is really important because everybody in healthcare has a partnership. Hospitals have partners with doctors, doctors have partners with other doctors, ambulance companies partner with hospitals and 911 systems and counties. Everybody has a partnership there. And that preferred partner status means that you're looking at someone and saying, I trust you. I trust you to do the right thing. I trust you to take care of patients. I trust you to not overutilize, do unnecessary surgeries, unnecessary tests, provide good quality care to our patients. And I want you to be my partner in healthcare so that we can service patients and bring the best quality care out there. That's really what you're looking for, is that trusted partner, right? And then last one is patient trust equity. And what do we all want to do in healthcare? We really want to ensure that patients are receiving good quality healthcare. If you're in it for any other reason, you're in it for the wrong reason. If you're in it for money, that's not right. If you're in it for fame or fortune, that's not right either. It's patient care. Building patient trust is probably our number one thing that we can produce as an ROI, as a compliance department, as a compliance advantage, because nobody wants to see their healthcare provider on the front page of a newspaper. No one wants to see that their healthcare information has been breached and all of your personal information, PHI, personal healthcare information, is on the dark web, or somebody's trying to steal your identity, right? As a patient, you really want to be able to trust that your providers are treating you well, you're not overcharging, you're not overutilizing, you're protecting my information. And that patient trust is really where we see healthcare organizations thrive. And we've seen other healthcare organizations big, large health systems, who have gone from being in trouble 20 years ago and getting in trouble by the federal government to being one of the top leading healthcare systems in the country, where people go, I want to go there because they provide great things. And on the flip side, there's a few that are not. And there are a few that go, I'll never set foot in one of those places because I see them all over the news. That patient trust equity is extremely important. When you see compliance as an investment, you fund it properly. And that doesn't mean you overfund it. That means properly and according to what the needs are that you have, that you've made that mentality. The investment is a mentality. It's a mentality changing from cost center to my advantage, and how am I going to fund that accordingly and get the return that I need. When you mitigate risks, you maximize your returns.
The next pillar, the essentials, you emphasize that these only work when they're activated, tested, and led. What happens when organizations move beyond just documenting policies to actually operationalizing them?
Bookshelf compliance programs are all for theater. They're not for protection. You pull something off a bookshelf and says, here's our compliance program, read it, we're doing great. That is not serving anybody's purpose at all. The essentials are so important because it does, like I said before, build the foundation and the infrastructure of the compliance program. And without the infrastructure of that compliance program, that's really what you're investing in. You're investing that infrastructure, but then you're also investing in how it gets done. When we talk about the essentials, it has 5 phases to that as well under the flywheel. And what that really looks at is first, you got to discover your gaps, and that's really your gaps analysis and your risk assessment. Next, it moves on to creating those infrastructure of the 7 elements in those compliance programs, right? And the OIG's done a great job about laying out what those 7 elements are and what that infrastructure looks like. And it's a great recommendation to say, this is what we need to create this infrastructure. Then you got to do something with that. We call that operationalizing the compliance program. You got to make it work. You got to make it run, right? You put all the pieces of a car together, but without an engine and without someone driving it, it's not going to run. It's just going to sit there. You got to make it go. You got to make it do things. You got to make it operationalize. You got to make it audit. You got to make it mitigate things. Prevention, detection, mitigation is huge on an operational standpoint, right? A binder on the shelf does not prevent, detect, or mitigate things from happening. A binder on the shelf just says, here's our binder on the shelf. Next thing is you got to have the leadership, right? You got to be able to lead that compliance program with the right people in place. After you've operationalized that program, you need to be able to be transparent and communicate the things that it's doing to the right people. A compliance program that doesn't talk to its executive leadership or communicate the right things, right? Complete, clear, and concise. Those are our 3 different requirements for communication. Everything must be complete. Don't ever give anything that's incomplete to somebody. It must be clear. Don't be deceptive about it. Be straight and to the point and understand what those risk factors are, right? And so that you can communicate them effectively. And then concise. And that is really to the point. Like, what are my risk factors? Where do I need to point my issues at? Don't fill it full of things that don't matter. Fill it full of things that are concise, to the point, so that you're not wasting people's time and they can understand and feel it. And then last is the leadership standpoint. You got to have someone to lead that compliance essentials. And that is not just the compliance officer. That's also your compliance committees and your board of directors. Everybody needs to be part of that triad. Under the lead piece for the flywheel, it really is that compliance officer, the executive compliance committee, and the board. Those 3 different aspects are the rationale behind how a compliance program is led, right? The OIG comes in very clearly and states, not only do you need a compliance executive who does your day-to-day, you also need a compliance committee that helps with the oversight of that program, in addition to making sure that the board of directors has a responsibility to ensure the company is doing the compliance work that needs to be done. So the essentials are really the infrastructure, the building blocks behind the investment that you've actually made into the program. So once you've invested, now you're building. And once you've built that thing and it's moving and it's operationalized, that becomes your compliance program that creates that infrastructure for that advantage. There's many of healthcare providers out there who say they have a compliance program, who say they have policies and procedures, and they still end up paying multi-millions of dollars in False Claims Act violations or anti-kickback violations. OIG is full of instances where people thought they had a good program in place, but it was just a bookshelf program. It goes from we have a compliance program to actually we live our compliance program.
The liability pillar addresses something many executives don't fully grasp until it's too late. How does understanding personal accountability change leadership behavior around compliance?
I think it's really important to understand that with the publication of the Yates memo and how the OIG is looking and DOJ are looking at compliance program and fraud, waste, and abuse in healthcare, they really are looking for individuals who can be responsible for that program. So the liability, and we're seeing this much more over the last 10 plus years, where individuals are being named in lawsuits. I've seen compliance officers. I've seen general counsels, lots and lots of CEOs, different partners in different firms being held accountable for fraud, waste, and abuse and False Claims Act issues individually, not just the companies. Back in the day, as a Gen 1 compliance officer, we saw a lot of people think, well, the company's responsible for everything. They got the money. I didn't make those decisions. The company made those decisions. And I believe that the government has shifted from that to say individuals drive behavior, not corporations. Corporations are just a thing that are driven by a bunch of individuals. And so we want to know who's making those decisions. And from a liability standpoint, the responsibility starts at the top. And CEOs, boards of directors, and compliance executives all have their own personal liability when it comes to ensuring that a company follows the standards and what needs to happen. That's why compliance programs are so important for people to understand that I do have a liability with this organization. Once you start figuring out that you personally have some liability in what happens with this organization, you start realizing that we can use this to our advantage, right? It always doesn't have to be something that I'm scared and running from, but we can use this as our advantage. So when I know that I have some liability in here, I can create that culture. I can make sure that people are listening. I can lead from the top down. And when everybody starts talking about what a culture of compliance is, because my CEO says it, my board says it, my compliance executive says it, and all three of those triad people are sitting there at the top going, this is what it needs to be, because we are all held accountable for this and we're all liable for this. We are going to make sure that we have this competitive advantage over everybody else, because we know the buck stops here. With bigger titles comes bigger responsibility. And unfortunately, that has everything to do with the compliance program.
This episode of the Compliance Advantage podcast is brought to you by Ronan Healthcare Compliance. At Ronan Healthcare Compliance, we believe in transforming healthcare compliance from a checkbox attitude to a strategic advantage. With decades of expertise, our team of consultants provides innovative solutions tailored to your organization's unique needs. We don't just help you meet your standards. We elevate your business, ensuring ethical practices are at the heart of what you do. Whether you're navigating complex regulations or seeking to enhance your compliance strategy, Ronan Healthcare Compliance is your partner in achieving excellence in healthcare compliance. Ronan Healthcare Compliance, redefining compliance, empowering leadership. Visit us at ronanhc.com to learn more. Now, back to the show. Your steady partner framework rebrands the compliance executive role entirely. Walk us through how this changes the dynamic between compliance and operations.
The shift really is hire a compass, not a comp. And a lot of the times when we first started in compliance and we talked about being a compliance officer, and really I hate the word compliance officer. And I do, and I don't like to say I hate anything, but I really do hate that word. It creates a different perspective for people who hear that. It's either one of two things. They're an officer of the company, which 99% are not officers of the company, because that is something very specific, like a chief executive officer or a chief financial officer. They're on the board and they're part of governance. Compliance officer is not that person. So what else is it? A police officer, right? And so once you start looking at things like it's through a lens of a police officer or somebody who's going to run around and get me in trouble all of the time, people start pulling away from what a compliance leader should be. And so we talk about this all the time. If you are a hammer looking for a nail as a compliance officer, no one's going to have a conversation with you. You're always going to feel like you're getting in trouble. So when we talk about the new compliance executive and what that means to be the steady partner is really important, because it changes the dynamic of what that compliance executive should be. And it's really talking about being strategic, transparent, having great evaluative processes. You're evaluating everything that goes on. You're adapting to whatever changes may happen within an organization. You are documenting clearly everything that is happening, and a lot of compliance officers may not do that. And then you're also looking at the yield. What benefit will this have Or what will this yield for this organization? So to be that steady partner is a very difficult thing. And for a healthcare organization or an executive team to find the right steady partner is very hard. And sometimes that takes trial and error and making sure they're part of the executive team as opposed to just being compliance officers. When executives see their compliance executive as a strategic partner, they're able to go fast, they're able to grow, they're able to do the things that they need to do without of fear of going over the rails or violating regulations or laws. When you talk about a lot of healthcare executives using their compliance officers or their compliance executives in getting into new markets or doing a strategic acquisition, that really, if they're a steady partner, you'll see a great transition from, hey, you can't do this, I'm the CF no, to, hey, let's have a CF go. And we're going to really be able to do all these things because I'm a strategic partner with you. And we're talking about how to get there, not the fact that you can't.
Finally, the assessment pillar positions risk assessments as radar, not report cards. How does this proactive intelligence change an organization's trajectory?
The greatest risks we see are the ones you don't see coming, right? And a lot of people get themselves into this bind because they just don't look. They're not looking at this. And the risk assessment is really this part where you're looking for the things that you don't know. We use the Titanic reference quite a bit. What's the iceberg underneath the water? Are you looking underneath the water? Do you know how much room you have? Do you know what you're going to hit? And it's also about being prepared. Knowing what you don't know, right, helps you be prepared for the future. And as we talked about the Titanic, they were A, not looking for things underneath the water, and B, they were not being proactive in or prepared in the event something does happen, right? So both of those things combined are fixed with a very fulsome risk assessment that goes in, looks underneath the water, looks underneath rocks, does audits, asks the question, figures out where those risk areas are for an organization, and is able to go, this is how we need to prevent, detect, and mitigate these things from happening in the future, because now I know what we're doing, now I know what we're not doing, now I know how we need to proceed. Risk assessments really do reveal blind spots before a disaster happens. Typically, when something happens later on, it becomes panic mode. All of a sudden, somebody happens, an investigation is going on, you get a third party audit, there's something that's happening, it becomes a scramble. If you've actually done your risk assessment and you know what you're doing and you've tested all of these things and put the mechanisms in place to ensure that it can happen correctly, or that make sure that you are doing things right, like billing and coding, and there's not an anti-kickback issue that are going on. When someone does come look, because someone will always come look, you're able to say, this is exactly what we're doing. I know exactly what it is. I know exactly what you're looking for. And whether we fixed this a year ago and now we're doing it this way, or we don't have a problem, and I can argue this point over and over again, and I've seen it. I've seen it work. I've seen it where someone comes in and they get a TPE or they get a UPIC audit on a specific issue, on something that's been utilized or done a couple of years ago, where they know exactly what happened, they know how they fixed it, and they respond that way, and it goes away. And that's exactly what we're looking for in that risk assessment. You know what you don't know. Now you're able to fix it, prevent, detect, and mitigate. And now you don't have to worry about what's underneath the water.
For the healthcare CEO listening right now, what's the first step to activating this 5-pillar framework in their organization?
When you think about this framework, the first thing that you have to think about is, I'm making the investment. When you start to think as an executive, do I need it? Do I not need it? I need someone to convince me that I need this or I don't need it. You're not ready for the framework. You're just not. You're not. You have to be able to look at it as, this is my advantage. This is what I really want to take away from it. And You've said, I am going to commit to this. I'm going to make the investment. And whether or not you use a third party to do that like us, or you go hire your compliance officer, it doesn't really matter. It's really irrelevant. It's that mindset to say, I am going to do this. And it's really important to understand that, because I've known a lot of CEOs and a lot of great ones that I respect a lot who just don't get the fact that they need to start a compliance program, and they don't really understand the liability, what it takes to build one, the risk assessment, the having that steady partner, and flip that on its head, where I have had some of the greatest CEOs that I've partnered with who understand every single aspect of that and say, yes, the third thing that I'm going to do after I've joined this company is have a compliance program. I'm going to do it. I'm making the investment. I'm putting $200,000 to $300,000 away. Could be more depending on the size of your organization. Could be a little bit less depending on what it is. But you're like $400,000 away. Put it in the budget. Set it. Forget it. And I have made this investment. Once you've made this investment, the rest of it will fall into place. You get your person to start your essentials, and then you move down, understand your liability, communicate that effectively, create that culture that you want to create. Find that steady partner that's going to be that strategic person who's going to be transparent and documenting and understand the organization and do the assessments and understand the yield from it. And then annually, you're doing that risk assessment. You're understanding exactly what your gaps are to fill over and over again. Because remember, part of the essentials, the first part of the essentials is finding what your gaps are right off the bat. The assessment part of it is finding out what you're continually doing down the road. So once that CEO, once that person understands the concept that I have a compliance program that is actually creating an advantage for me, that's showing me how fast I can go and how much I can grow and how I can take care of my patients and my population, and I say I'm going to make that investment, all the rest of it falls into place. Typically, when you're building in a compliance program and you're implementing all of these pillars to create that advantage, it's not a 5-year plan. It's a 1-year plan. It's probably less than a 1-year plan. And as long as you're putting the elements in place and you're using these pillars and understanding what they are, that advantage will start taking shape immediately, because you have the right people in place, you have the right programs in place. You confidently can say, we are doing the right thing. So ultimately, when I say to CEOs, start with your investment, and then everything will flow from there.
Ross, what's the one thing you want healthcare leaders to remember about these 5 pillars as we close the episode today?
Really understand that they all work together, and they all work together to create that advantage. And once you start thinking about compliance as not a gotta have it because someone tells me I gotta have it, to say I want it because it shows me how I can go forward and how I can have an advantage in my organization. That is the one thing that I want everybody to understand, is they all work together, but they are all part of the same thing, which is creating that advantage. And once you've decided that, once you understand that, and once you find the right people to be a part of that, then everything else will fall into place. Ultimately, you become market leaders, where people try to say, I want to be like that company. I want to be like that healthcare organizations. Federal agencies like the OIG and DOJ look at you and go, oh, I know what you guys do. I'm so glad that you're on this issue so we can work through mitigating what the issues are and how do we fix them. People start partnering with you from that perspective and saying, I want to be working with you on a day-to-day basis in healthcare because I know you're doing the right things. And ultimately, patients look at you like, I really want to go get my healthcare from that organization, from that practice, from that behavioral health center, because I know they have my best interests in place. And that's really where I see that advantage coming through. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Compliance Advantage podcast. If you enjoyed it, please rate, review, and share this episode with someone who might benefit from it. Don't forget to visit us at ronanhc.com for more resources and connect with us on social media for the latest updates. And remember, compliance pays dividends. Invest today.